CFC. But let's start. I want to start off as always with off the pitch, and you guys are such a fascinating club, right? I mean, your ownership groups. I mean, no introduction needed, right? Yankees, Manchester City, two of the major sports conglomerates in the world, and it's finally headed to the right direction. Obviously, listen, you guys had the MLS Cup. You had some star players don the blue, the light blue and orange. But the problem is that you guys didn't have a proper ground, right? Playing at Yankee Stadium is cool for 1 to 2 seasons, but after 10, you're like, yeah, we need our own. We need a soccer specific stadium. It seems like you guys are heading in that right direction. Obviously, today we had the news of Marcelo Claure, who now joins in with your front office. So it's definitely exciting time. So talk about the brand that is NYCFC, Javier. How has this been growing now as we're heading into the NYCFC stadium coming along?
So there's kind of like a couple facets happening. I mean, I don't know if you saw the crust. There's a new crust that came out that basically looks like the old one. I don't even know why they had to change it, but okay. But it's kind of this whole rebranding of like, they want to be called New York City Football Club. And it's like to distinguish themselves and like really come out and be like, hey, we are this brand. We have our own stadium now. 2026 is coming. World Cup. There's just so much exciting things. Stadium is coming. So I think this whole rebrand is like, it's like a rebrand refresh. They want to kind of come out to this soccer community in Queens, which we haven't we've started to embrace because we play some games at City Field. But I think that fan base and grabbing that Queens fan base over to when we get that new stadium is going to be tremendous. And it might be even us kind of breaking away from the Yankees a little bit, because if you see this, Claudio he just took 10% of the Yankees ownership. So there might be a little bit of breaking away from that, and Yankees own less than half now. They had 20%, now they have 10%. So I think it's a whole rebrand, and just kind of the only thing that I think is upsetting some fans is like they want to see stars now. Like, hey, the stadium's coming, and I think that's one of the things that was holding us back. Like we were playing in 4 different stadiums at times: Red Bull Arena, City Field. We played in Connecticut at some point. Like I think now this stadium is going to be opening the doors to those star players that you see in LAFC and LA Galaxy.
It's so funny you bring that up, because obviously you guys also took over your I don't know. I guess you guys can say it's your little brother in the Red Bull. It's funny. It's funny when you guys take over Red Bull Arena. I always found that fascinating there. But it's fascinating you do bring that up, because when we talk about the European stars, and every offseason or every transfer period, there's always the rumors. Griezmann, now we have Giroud over here. Whatever big star you name it, it's always Miami. It's always LA. But we all know the biggest market in this country is New York. Does this mean that now you guys will be going after some of those big names? Maybe you guys are in the running for a player of the caliber of Messi in the future here.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, and I guess maybe the disappointing thing, is that we've kind of gone that route. We went the David Villa, Lampard route, and while we had fans in the stadium at that time, it kind of fizzled out. So I think one of the things, and we've talked to CEO Brad Sims about this, and he said, hey, we're not trying to build stars. We're not trying to have posters of stars in front of our new stadium. It's more like we're going to be winners, and we're going to be consistent winners. So we don't need that big name. But at the same time, this is New York. We want big names. And that's what I always say. Like, you see, when it was Copa America out here, it was 81,000 at MetLife. Like, there are lots of soccer fans here, and you have to start attracting those soccer fans, and having a couple big names wouldn't hurt. And LAFC, and one thing that LAFC does, that they like keep turning over their new stars, and it's like they never kind of go through that slump. And when you have a big city like that, I feel like you can't afford to get those stars and then just turn them over again.
That's a really good point. Now, like for a club like the Union, I love the way you guys build personally, because I love the markets you kind of dive into. I don't ever want the Union to go after those big type of players. And listen, the average soccer fan would love to see that, but I do hold a mistake that building a team with guys who have a chip on their shoulder. You know, you don't want one DP who's making $10 million and the rest, you know, the locker room is 800,000, $1 million, 200,000. Like, you don't want that disparity throughout the dressing room. But when you're talking about a market like New York, and obviously we all know Red Bull are not really going to be spending big money, but New York, there is that NYCFC, there is that possibility. So I think like for your club as in general, I feel like that's something that you guys should definitely look at. But it's hard to argue too, because you guys have been obviously successful, and we'll talk about Nick Cushing and his tenure here. But I mean, 2021, that wasn't too long ago, and you look at some of the names on that roster; those weren't household names until now. Obviously, Tati Castellanos doing his thing over in Europe, but it is interesting thing to kind of look at, as you know, the MLS kind of now moves into what, like MLS 3 or MLS 4.0 now. What does that kind of look like? So it's going to be interesting times in the league here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I think you even mentioned this prior, and I actually listened to you a couple of times. Like, there's not many storylines this year, and I'm falling into that same issue that you're falling into, where it's like I'm not as invested as I was prior. And some of those storylines comes from, like, I don't know, like sometimes you see NBA and like you get the best star with the best star, and then you see him go at it, and that's a storyline right there. You want to see that, or the best player gets traded to this team, and then you want to see that fight. So I feel like we're kind of missing that this season.
Yes, that like off the field disparity that like makes the NBA so big. I mean, even like the NFL, there's always huge storylines. And I talked about it before. I always felt like the MLS was heading in a direction where it was going to surpass baseball. But baseball this year has really captivated a lot of young minds, and they have a lot of star power. And hopefully the MLS gets back to that. It does feel like we kind of hit a little stalemate here in 2024, but there is still more to see here with our league. But with that said, let's talk about that club that you now. Oh, first off, anything you can add on with the Marcelo Claure news there from today? What is it? Because the big thing I see is like, what does this mean for NYCFC?
What I think it means is that there's going to be more money being invested to the stadium. Really, that's what it is. And I think losing some of that ownership from the Yankees, who probably didn't want to invest more into this project, is kind of where that's going. But this guy has experience in the CFG world. He actually was part owner in Girona. He did start up Miami as well back in the day. So we'll see where the puzzles kind of lay out. But for now, I just think it's another partner and more investors onto the team.
We all silly like the mayor.